Hello, this is Scott. I'm the breathing guy. I develop core breathing for energy and strength to effectively give you more force to change to be better than you are now. I deal with positive energy, negative energy, and neutral. And this video is titled The Ego and Self and How to Change. For change is the ego. If you want to change to affect your soul, use your spirit to overcome trauma, life, and have a much more positive perspective of things around you. This is what this video is going to address. Because if you can't change your ego, you can't change. You can always modify things. That's like adjusting a little here, adjusting there, you feel a little better this. And it's a lot of fads have done that. That's very fad oriented. You have a period of time of great time, but in reality, you haven't really changed because it makes you feel better, but you still have certain issues like PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome. That's a great term. It's what is it? Basically, you had trauma either in war over a long period of time or fear. It's basically how do you overcome fear that happened to you that is not appropriate now. And when you're surviving, the funny thing about fear, you're fear of dying, but you haven't died, but you still fear of dying. It's almost a contradiction term because if you died, you wouldn't have any fear. But that's being human. Being human is complex. We have free will or choices. We can do things that no other creature can on the planet. We have free will. And when I say free will, it's an interesting term and it's very intricate. And one way do, it seems like we don't. Another way we do because we have post-traumatic syndrome. That is a clear free will situation of do we want to keep it or hold on to it or do we want to change it? And I would recommend changing it because it locks you into a set of views that limits your creativity in life. The first understanding way I take this whole video series is humans create their emotional physical reality. Animals live in their physical reality. Since we create our reality emotionally and physically, therefore, what tools, can we do? And why do we have that ability? Because three things. We have free will, we have a spirit, and we have a soul, and we have a physical body that houses it all together. And how do we change is through our physical body, our mental thoughts, and our energy. And I'm going to go into great details of how you can modify all these things to give you a greater experience of what life is. Because life is impermanent. There's two rules that I'm going to put in here. One, life is impermanent. Everything's impermanent. This planet is impermanent. Everything's impermanent, one. Two is that life is suffering for human beings. Now, animals suffer, grant you. Well, that's physical. Humans have two sufferings. One is physical, and the other is emotional. And there's a great distinction between males and females, and how the world is and how it must be. And for survival for humans, males have to be social. We have to be in groups, we have to be connected, and we have to deal with a lot of realities because we are aware of our mortality and we mark our time in reality. And that's very different than what animals can do. So really understanding what we are and what we can do is the beginning to understand the ego, the self, your spirit, and your soul. Because they're all wrapped together in our culture, in our environment, in our situation in life. If you got life, you're alive, you can effectively do things until the very end. And the biggest thing you have to deal with is attitude. because what your attitude is basically part of your ego. Ego and attitude are like part of the lens, the shape. The ego is like the lens, and the attitude is the shape of the lens to what lets out and comes in. And the self is part of the whole process of projecting energy and receiving energy. So when you say ego and self, when you look up the definition, they sort of go together. But being humans, the ego is what is expressed and people will relate to. The self is the relationship to what people see in the body form. This is the approach I'm taking so you can deal with post-traumatic syndrome. You might just say, life is post-traumatic. Anyway, look, especially when you reach my age. It's a matter of the nice thing. Wisdom comes with age, for sure, if you want it. And shortness of time makes everything condensed and makes everything real. When you're young, great, you have a future. Middle age, you balance it out. You still have a future involved. But when you get past 70, you have a short future and a long past to deal with. And memories flash and dreams or whatever. And my idea here is making the most out of the time you have left to do what? To shape your soul, to strengthen your spirit. Because once the body is gone, you don't have that anymore. And I'll give you physical definitions to work with and how it links together. Now, I don't say there's not other methods to do this. I don't say there can't be greater range, but I'm just giving you basic foundations I know in the best way. Because there's a lot of things I can talk about, but I don't have the vocabulary to go into well. Or I get very esoteric, goes into physics or areas I can get very too much, and I lose you. That's not the point. The point here is to give you tools and understanding that if you want to overcome depression or you want to overcome trauma like you've been in war and you want to realize what you have to do to change, and that is not easy. It is the work of life. And what inhibits the work? You have to understand what inhibits your work, and if you want to change. And when I say change, what do you want to change? You want to change your ego, and you want to change your body. That forms the self at this period of time. Remember, I say humans create their emotional, physical reality within the situations they find themselves in life. And realizing that, what do you want to create in situations? And I argue this. There's 3 energy states that you can create. One is negative. That's a good cynic, go ahead and that's it. Neutral, everything's fine, or positive. See the absolute joy of life, the joy of a moment, something small, the sunrise, and prayer. Prayer is the number one joy that you can derive because it suspends all the physical suffering, all the economics, and all the trauma around you for a few moments. That's what prayer does. It suspends because you go to forces beyond your understanding, beyond our recognition. All things we know is relevant to the language we know and the culture and time period we live in. But they all lead in one direction. They all know. I can go to every culture. I know, major culture, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, whatever, and they all have certain properties being humans. Men, women, their relationships, how to survive, intricacies there, and they all have a religion, a state of understanding of what they intuitively know they want to predict, for they know their mortality. They have time to understand their mortality. So really understanding how this works together gives you the greatest possibility to create your emotional physical reality at this time to be positive and freeing yourself up. And what's the first thing, if you had a choice, going from all the negative things happen to in your life, drug use, like this, your cynicism involved, despair, and you want to change over to something else. What's the first thing you need to develop in your life? And this is what I advocate. The first thing you need to life is peacefulness, calmness. Look at the synonyms for peacefulness: calmness, a state of tranquility, yet in the middle of a storm. This is what you have to develop if you want the other two things you need to really appreciate your life and time, and the talents you have and the limitations you have. And believe me, I have small talents but a whole lot of limitations. And I'm just expressing myself. This is one of the few outlets of you want to say, challenge, joy, and learning. I like to learn. So this is what this video is about. Give a point of view that may help you to deal with, you want to say, traumas of the past, where it does not limit yourself today of being more connected to others, have more love for everything around you, of your existence, but also be very grounded in the reality around you. Remember, everyone creates their emotional, physical reality. That's the ego and the self. Imagine a coin. One side, you say heads, you can say that's your spirit. Tail is your soul. And the coin itself is the body. And how they come together and go forward in life, in time. And remember, everything's impermanent. I can't think of anything that's physical material that isn't permanent, that's not impermanent. This plant is impermanent, period. The sun is impermanent, even. So understanding that dimension, what isn't impermanent? Your soul and your spirit. That I know for a fact, under physics laws. That I know for a fact. Those are permanent. So understanding that is a beginning to define if you want to change. And what's the first thing you want to change into? Is calmness, peacefulness, all the synonyms to those two words. It lays the foundation for you to expand and be calm in any situation in life, to realize your mortality and who you are as a male, female, spiritual being with a soul in a physical body in the time period you're in. So this is Scott, the breathing guy, and this is the beginning of a video series on the ego, self, and life change, to enjoy it even more than you are now.